This story now, the latest global state of harm reduction report has indicated that South Africa is now one of the largest meth consumer markets in the world, even though harm reduction interventions have increased. To discuss this further, we are joined by the South African National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence National Coordinator, Adrie Vermeulen. Thank you very much, Adrie, for your time here on eNCA. Just, give us the reality of how this looks in terms of meth and us apparently being one of the largest markets in the world?
Yes, correct. And I think that is substantiated by some of our statistical information that we've seen in both our centers. We've got 31 centers across the country, and we have started seeing this as a trend in our treatment centers, as well as when you look at the World Drug Report that was released earlier this year in June. We also saw that there's a rise in amphetamine use, and especially under women as well. So yes, we do see that. We've seen an 18% increase from last year to this year of admissions for amphetamine, which shows that there is a real concern. And when we look at the secondary statistics, we also start seeing that it affects the under 20-year-olds a lot.
So what's causing this? I mean, okay, I know that there's a lot of things that could cause it, but tell me, is it also, are one of the causes also attributed to the fact that as a country we are seen as an enabler for the people who sell this to come in here and go undetected?
I think it's a combination of issues that we have to address, and one of it is definitely the high rates of unemployment. And people are looking at alternatives to create, obviously, income. And even after COVID-19, we've seen a decline in people having proper work. So we also see that methamphetamine as well as cat is very easy to manufacture. And people can even find the recipe if they really know where to look for it. And that's a real concern, is that it is something that can be produced, and you can use chemicals that you can find to do that and have the ingredients to then make up your own concoction. And this is what we call designer drugs, because you can also manipulate the drugs and put different kinds of chemicals together, and that's also a dangerous combination.
And that explains my next question then, because I was going to ask you, Adrie, why particularly meth? I mean, we'd rather not be called, the biggest market for any drug, but I was wondering why meth itself. But now that you've explained that it's so easy to manufacture, that kind of makes sense for me. But in terms of the market itself, why are we seeing such young people? I mean, you're saying that it mostly affects people under the age of 20. These are people who don't even have jobs most of the time. Why is it that they are the target, and why they are such an easy target with this?
I think when we look at the youth of today, we have to realize that they have lost hope. They've lost hope in the future, where they are going, and they don't really see where they are heading in their own life. So they become very easy targets then to consume this. Because when we look at methamphetamine, it's a stimulant. It helps you to feel better about yourself. And that is a lot of times where we also see underlying conditions, because there is also depression, there is trauma. A lot of them are also victims of rape and of violence against them. And so it's a whole combination of issues that are related to methamphetamine use.
And that is why earlier this week UNICEF actually had a report, Adrie, that said 73% of our youth in South Africa is suffering from mental illness. People from the age of about 14 are suffering from mental illness in South Africa, and 73% is quite an alarming number. But also, isn't it an issue that we as a country don't, invest in things such as, a way of dealing with mental illness? Instead, till today, there's a talk about it, negative talk about suffering from a mental illness. There's a stigma. And doesn't that add on then to the drugs? Then it'll add on to why we're considered one of the top 10 most violent countries in the world.
Absolutely. So if you look at that, we always say which one came first. Was it the mental health condition, or was it whether it was the type of substance that we've used? And we know that methamphetamine specifically creates some of your mental health conditions that you see, but it's also used as a self-medication. Where they self-medicate an underlying mental health condition. So it's very difficult to say which one was there before the other one. And that's why it's so important in our treatment centers that proper assessments are done, proper medical care as well as psychiatric care is offered. And it makes it very difficult in our treatment centers because there's a lack of psychiatrists that understands addiction, and that treats addiction effectively. So from that point of view, it's really been a challenging substance to treat in our treatment facilities.
And just lastly, Adrie, I mean, what's the, I always ask this question and I just wonder how the guests will be able to answer it. What's the solution to sorting this out? I mean, as a country, we're so good at diagnosing ourselves. We know exactly what our problems are. We have organizations such as yours also that help us diagnose what our issues are. But when it comes to actually implementation to the solutions, I think we lack.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And that's where we don't have enough evidence-based interventions, that really proves what works for South Africa. And when we go back to where do we start? We have to start from prevention. And a lot of our focus is on, like you say, on the diagnosis and treatment. But we have really failed our youth. We've really failed our children in building resilience in them from a young age to be able to withstand these temptations that comes their way. I'm not only talking about substances. I'm also talking about sexual health issues. I'm talking about gender identity. So there's a lot of work to be done as a collective to address this, because substance abuse is a symptom of what is going wrong in our society.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for speaking to us, Adrie. It actually, made me quite despondent myself when I saw that article that suggests that South Africa is one of the leading markets when it comes to meth, apparently alongside your Zambia, Uganda, Mozambique, Malawi, Botswana. So it's all the African countries where actually we cannot afford to have such problems. That was South African National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence National Coordinator, Adrie Vermeulen.